Water features in dart frog vivariums is a surprisingly controversial topic. Some really old care guides insist that a pond is necessary in the vivarium, but nowadays the hobby generally has a much more negative stance towards them. Unfortunately, what should be a friendly discussion has in some communities become extreme. Especially in places like Facebook, the topic is often reduced to short and witty comments that repeat half-truths with very little context or outright misinformation. Some commenters will claim that even a small puddle will doom your frogs in at least 12 different ways, while others dismiss all concerns entirely and treat water features as harmless by default. I think this creates an environment where all nuance gets lost and ignorance prevails over education, and this is genuinely hurtful to the hobby. As usual, I personally think the truth lies somewhere in between. There are many valid reasons to be concerned about water features and good reasons to avoid them, but it's not nearly as black and white as it's often portrayed. I'm not claiming to be an expert, but in this video I will try my best to cover the whole discussion, as well as what you have to consider if you do go for a water feature, to help you make an educated decision. To those of you watching who have experience with dart frogs and water features, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. The most common claim that's brought up when water features are being discussed is that dart frogs cannot swim and will drown in them. After 6 years in the community, I have yet to hear a single credible account of a healthy dart frog drowning in a water feature solely due to an inability to swim. At the same time, I've seen an abundance of footage of dart frogs swimming with no issues, so I'm very skeptical of this claim. However, it must be said that unlike many other frogs, dart frogs are adapted to a life entirely on land, which is why they for instance don't have webbed feet, and swimming takes quite a bit of energy for them and they get tired very quickly. When they do swim, it's more so to get the heck out of the water as soon as possible, rather than to float around in the water and enjoy themselves, so it rarely lasts for more than a few seconds. They will probably struggle if they have to swim for longer distances, so it's very important that any potential water features have some sloped edges that are easy for the frogs to climb out on. My impression is that the confusion about whether dart frogs can swim or not originates from the fact that sick frogs often go towards water when they are about to die, and are found dead in or near the water's edge, making it seem like they drowned in a few millimeters of water. Another thing that's often brought up is the potential for territorial frogs to attempt to drown each other while fighting. I don't think this is common at all, because I've only read about a single case of a frog unsuccessfully attempting this, but ever since I briefly mentioned this possibility in my dart frog care guide 2 years ago, I've seen many people claiming that this is a highly likely outcome. Honestly though, this is more so an issue with a poor group constellation than the water itself in my opinion, and with group-friendly dart frog species, I think this is probably unlikely. The only case I'm aware of was on a Faga pomilio that tried to drown a Phyllobates lugubris, and I would never even keep those together in the first place due to the very predictable risk of fighting. In my opinion, a better reason to avoid water features in dart frog vivariums is the fact that it's quite a bit of effort and many practical things can go wrong. Simulating both a forest floor and a water feature next to each other in the same tank poses its challenges. One risk is that water from the water feature saturates the substrate, due to a misdirected water flow or a leaking barrier between the substrate and the water, or something else, essentially turning the whole tank into a swamp. A soaking wet substrate will quickly become anaerobic, smell like rotten eggs, become an excellent breeding ground for bacteria, and can cause infections for the frogs sitting in it. Other issues can include pumps malfunctioning, bacterial growth due to stagnant water, difficulties keeping the water clean, or issues balancing the moisture level throughout the tank. It's important that any pump used is easily accessible for maintenance or replacement, in case that would be necessary in the future. All of these arguments can sort of be met by, if you know what you're doing, you can pull it off successfully, and there are many working water features out there, but it's undoubtedly an extra level of difficulty and you're adding more things that can go wrong. If you're new to the hobby, I highly recommend you to not have a water feature, since there are already enough other things to learn and mess up. Countless water features, especially ones made by beginners, have been drained and filled up with substrate instead within a few months, either due to technical issues or because of my next point, and that's worth serious consideration. I talked before about whether dart frogs can swim, or in other words, whether or not the water feature poses an actual threat to them. However, what's worth noting is that even though dart frogs can swim when their life depends on it, they certainly won't choose to do so voluntarily. Once again, they are terrestrial animals that only might use a water feature to dip their feet occasionally or, in some cases, deposit tadpoles. We usually say that dart frogs want dry feet and a wet back, since they live in the leaf litter on the forest floor, and that's the environment we should try to replicate in our enclosures, rather than dripping waterfalls, large puddles, and soaking wet moss. A large water feature is completely useless for them and reduces the already limited amount of usable land area in the tank. I think this is a far greater reason to avoid water features than the dart frog's drowning argument, which is why I think it's sad that a verifiably incorrect claims floods the comment sections and makes the argument against water features lose credibility. Personally, I don't think there's a problem if you have a small pond in the corner of a large vivarium if you have set it up correctly, but if half the floor space of your vivarium consists of water, then you should definitely reconsider what animal you're going to keep in there, since dart frogs will be completely unable to utilize it. For example, if an 18 by 18 inch vivarium has a water feature covering half of it, it's essentially an 18 by 9 inch enclosure from the frog's point of view, which would be too small. In general, I don't think I would ever bother with a water feature in a tank with a footprint smaller than 90 by 45 centimeters or 36 by 18 inches. Besides being pretty, the only advantage of water features I could come up with is that a few dart frog species will actually use it for breeding to some extent. Most dart frogs use smaller water sources, such as bromeliad leaf axils, to rear their tadpoles in, so for instance Ranitomea species, I would claim that a water feature is completely useless, but there are also some dart frogs that will lay larger clutches of eggs, have non-cannibalistic tadpoles, and deposit them all together in the same slightly larger water source. The first frog that comes to mind is Epipodobedes anthonii, and the same should go for other Epipodobedes species. They can happily rear their tadpoles in a small pond in the tank and are generally better at swimming and living around water features than other species, even though they still won't really use the water for recreational purposes at all. Frogs from the Ameriga genus can supposedly also be more likely to breed if they have a small stream in the vivarium, but I don't have personal experience with this genus. I don't know of anyone who lets their Amerigas complete the whole life cycle in the tank, like I do with Epipodobedes, and if it's possible, it might require some more support feeding from the keeper since their tadpoles are bigger than Epipodobedes tadpoles, but I will leave those conclusions up to you. I have assumed that Philobedes are also better suited for a vivarium with a water feature than the average dart frog, since they also have non-cannibalistic tadpoles that they deposit in larger water sources, but I haven't kept these with a water feature, so I don't know if they're actually better at swimming and so on. However, it must still be said that a water feature is absolutely not necessary to have for these species either. It's very easy to take out their eggs and raise their tadpoles communally outside of the enclosure, and this gets you a lot more control of how many froglets you raise. If you do go for a water feature, keep it small, because they won't have any use for something massive that takes away their valuable land area. This segment is more so to say that if you do want a water feature, choosing an Epipodobedes, Ameriga or Philobedes for that tank is probably your best and most fun option. In my Epipodobedes enclosure, there is a water feature of around 30 by 10 centimeters and let's say 5 centimeters of depth, and the entire life cycle of the frogs takes place in the enclosure, with the tadpoles growing up in the water feature and supposedly living mostly on microfilm and algae that they find. However, I do actually feed the tadpoles with some fish food in the water feature too, since I really don't want to risk getting a clutch of small and weak frogs due to a lack of food during the tadpole phase. Once the froglets leave the water, I leave them to fend for themselves in the tank with the adults, and besides dumping plenty of extra springtails in the tank when they are really small, I don't do anything too special with them. One thing you will have to consider if you're keeping one of these species with a water feature is that it can become difficult to restrict their breeding, and with prolific frogs such as the Epipodobedes, letting them raise an infinite amount of tadpoles is quite irresponsible, since you will end up with hundreds of frogs and it will become difficult to find good homes for them all. I ended up taking out all the adult females from the tank with the water feature in order to stop them from breeding. I would personally only do water features in tanks which are substrateless, meaning that they have filter foam that serves as both the substrate and the drainage layer at the same time. This means that you won't have too much tannins tinting the water, except the ones from the leaf litter, and that there's no substrate that will be ruined if it gets waterlogged. I do also have a pump buried in the filter foam on the right side of the tank, which pumps water all the way to the left side through a hose to circulate the water, but the water flow is quite gentle. The pump can easily be accessed for maintenance, in case I have to clean it in the future. I do a small water change every month or so, but when all the plant roots keep growing, they will probably become less and less necessary in the future. If you want to see in detail exactly how my water feature is set up, check out episode 4 of my series Vivarium Rebirth, which will be linked in the description. That series has some of my best content on this channel, even though it all kind of flopped when it comes to the number of views, so I think it's well worth checking out episodes 1 to 3 as well while you're at it. There is definitely a reason why so many people end up building a water feature and later filling it with substrate instead, whether that be practical issues or the frogs just not using it whatsoever. While the claim that dart frogs can't swim might not hold up very well, it's still very much true that they pretty much won't swim, and they will have very little use for a water feature in their enclosure, so you should definitely avoid water features that take away a significant portion of the frog's living space. In my opinion, a small pond in some corner of a large vivarium is completely doable, but if the word Paludarium defines the entirety of your enclosure better than the word vivarium, then that's probably not an environment made to meet the needs of dart frogs, and I would recommend looking into something else like fire-bellied toads instead. There are so many things that can go wrong, and as a beginner, it's easy to get overconfident and try your hands at something fancy that you end up regretting, so I highly recommend just skipping the water feature, especially if you're new to the hobby. If you do go for one, know that it's for your own sake and not really for the frogs. However, now I hope you know everything you need to know to make an educated decision based on more than those short and witty Facebook comments, and have a good grasp of the full picture. That was it for today's video. If you found it helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a like, because it's completely free and it really goes a long way to support me. To those of you who have experience with water features in your vivariums, please let me know your opinion in the comments section down below. If you want to see more of my animal room, check out my Instagram page at gecko_geek06. I also recently started a Discord server called the Leaf Litter Lounge, where you can talk directly to me and the rest of the community and get some behind the scenes sneak peeks of what's to come on the channel, so feel free to join there and say hi. The link is in my channel description. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.